I'm Danielle Passwaters. I'm the manager and curator of the Union Art Gallery here. And joined with us today is Pamela Anderson, local gallery owner, studio manager, and professional artist in her own right here in Milwaukee. The topic of today is art and business, and I thought who better to bring than someone who I have personal experience with that knows a little bit about that, and also Reggie Baylor. So I'm just going to pass it on to you. Testing? Nope. If this starts working again, I'll give it to you. I'll keep an eye on her.
Okay, I'll just have to talk loud. If you can't hear me in that, this will give me practice on my speaking voice. So, yes, I am an artist, and I'm so excited to be here tonight and tell you a little bit about my journey. I think all artists have their story, and mine is interesting, and I love where it's brought me to where I am today in my art practice and my journey through life. And sometimes I stop to think about it and I think, yes, it is very interesting. So a little bit about that today and why it gives me a voice in Milwaukee to speak about the arts. I'm still learning. I don't know everything. Everyone around me is teaching me on a daily basis. So my journey started when I was very young. I realized at a very young age that I wanted to be an artist, and of course I didn't know what that meant, what that entailed. I couldn't possibly, at this very young age, realize all of what that entailed. But it was the same desire and passion, realizing that I had a gift and that I wanted to do something with it, that has carried me throughout my journey and is still with me today and is what drives my passion and interest in the arts. So I started out, I had a great experience with education as a young child. Fortunately, I'm that old where we had arts in the schools. As a young person through my high school years. And in my high school years, I virtually lived in the art room. The only pictures of me in the yearbook other than my class picture are of me in the art room. And that was where you could find me. So I also didn't really have a teacher that stands out that I remember in my education during those years that pushed me to following art after high school. And in my senior year, I realized that that is something that I wanted to do. But the art teacher that I had, she just wasn't very good with those things. I lived in a small rural town, and all of the kids in my class, all the women, actually were being encouraged to be two things, a nurse or a teacher. And I went to my dad and I asked if I could pursue college education, and I wanted to study art. And sadly, he told me that he had planned for my brother's future in college, but that women weren't necessary to educate because they were just going to get married and have babies. So I was crushed. It was very disappointing for me, and realizing that I too hadn't planned for a future like that, I decided I needed to be an adult and pursue art. I wasn't going to stop, but I also realized that I probably needed to grow up and realize that I was going to have to do something, and I certainly hadn't planned for college for any other reason than to go and study art. So I went to VOTEC school and got practical business training, and after 6 months I got a fabulous job actually at the First National Bank of St. Paul in Minnesota, and I started my business career that way. So it was a great job. I had a great boss, And as a young person, 18 years old, I felt so grown up and started planning for my future. All the while, I kept doing art. Not a lot, but I was still painting and drawing and busy doing something. And I was at that bank for 7 years, and it was a great experience. And while I was there, I was learning how to be more assertive, have more confidence in myself. I was learning skills, didn't know it then, but I was learning skills that would take me into, in the future, applying them towards an arts business, because I have found through the years that business is business, and I wish more artists felt like business people without losing their passion, without losing their art self, but applying themselves more as business people, because I feel, and I would like to talk about different aspects of that this evening, because I feel that they would be more successful as artists if they thought of themselves in those terms. So I then also got married, and did get married, did have babies. Dad was happy. And after my second child, I decided I didn't want to go back into banking. So I was presented with an opportunity to start an art gallery in the small town of Hudson, Wisconsin. It's a small river town up in the St. Croix Valley area outside the Twin Cities. And in the river towns along there, if you wanted culture and art, you went into the Twin Cities. There wasn't a whole lot going on. There were some small theater groups, but there weren't a lot of venues for visual artists. There weren't a lot of galleries back then in our small towns, and I thought it would be great to start this artist, because what we did have, we had a large number of fine artists that lived there, but they didn't have any place to display their work. So they loved the idea too. So my two friends and I started our art gallery. We each invested $476.21 into the gallery, and granted, most of it was done, we were doing consignments, we didn't have a lot of product, or, art that we had to purchase outright. 6 months later, I was loving it. I also learned a great deal, because I had no idea what it took to run an art gallery. But I learned quickly and ended up doing all the books, ended up doing all the marketing, ended up doing store display and everything that goes into having a gallery and working with individual artists. My two partners, not so much. They couldn't believe how much work it was and were overwhelmed and decided that it wasn't for them. So I bought them out, purchased their part of the business, and kept going. And 12 months later, my then husband was offered a job in New Orleans, Louisiana. I was really excited about the thought of adventure and going to New Orleans. Very, very excited. I'd never really spent a great deal of time, other than visiting some family in a few different states, living in a city like that, and I was really excited about going down there to experience it. Disappointed that I would have to do something with my art gallery. So I taught myself how to sell it, put all my information together, and after having had the business for 14 months actually, I sold it for $10,500. So I felt it was good years of work, and I was pretty happy with the success, and the gallery went on for several years after I left the people that bought it. And I took that expertise along with my now banking experience down to New Orleans, decided not to do a gallery down there because I thought that I didn't really know anyone down there. I had no contacts yet, And I knew that we would probably only be there for a few years, and I wanted to really experience New Orleans and Louisiana. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I was trying to start a new business. But I always knew I would do an art gallery again someday. So I got back into banking to help support the family, and got into international banking, learned a lot about banking instruments. I did underwriting, worked in the letter of credit department, ended up managing it, and worked with other banking instruments. And it was, again, a really great experience, and really enjoyed that too. And 4 years later, my husband was offered a job in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which brought me back to my homeland. And what I also really experienced down there too it was a very different way of life than Wisconsin and New Orleans, good and bad. And it helped me have a broader perspective of culture overall. And I experienced a lot of art while I was down there, a lot of different type of art than I did in Wisconsin. Still throughout that time, I continued doing work, because while I was living in Hudson, Wisconsin, and while I had my little art gallery, I started teaching myself how to do a type of art called China painting porcelain art. It's actually originated in China. And I had my own kiln, and I ended up working with interior designers, and I produced art tiles that were mostly very traditional, a lot of botanical, animals, birds, a lot of birds, and landscapes. And I worked with interior designers and planned out whole tile installations for bathrooms and kitchens around the country, and a few in Europe too. I still wonder if they're up on the walls. Anyways, that was really fun. So I continued doing my art that way. I was getting better at my painting, and hadn't worked on canvases for a long time. And moving back to Milwaukee, I wanted to continue on in banking, but couldn't find a banking position. All I could find were teller positions, and I wanted something more exciting than that. So I decided mortgage banking wouldn't be that much different than banking, and found out differently. But they asked if I would take a entry-level position, because I didn't have anything open at my level, but they promised that they would promote me within, as soon as they could, if I would agree to take that position. So I did, and I had an opportunity about 6 months after that, and they offered me a position, and I started working my way up in that company. And at the end of 14 years there, I had worked in a variety of positions and had learned a great deal about the mortgage banking industry. And I got in on it when it was fun. It was early on when they had just started securitizing mortgages for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and Ginnie Mae. And what I ended up doing was I was initially doing the trading with the Wall Street dealers in New York, and we were buying loans all around the country, and we securitized them and sell them to Wall Street. I actually helped write a computer program to get our trading desk better organized, because when I arrived in the department, they were writing their trades on a legal pad, and at the end of the month when we had to balance with Wall Street, trades were missing, trades hadn't been delivered, it was a huge mess. And I wrote a computer program, didn't know anything about that, but I figured it out, and it was really fun. And we never missed another trade, and we always balanced, so it was pretty cool. At the end of my career there, I worked for Fleet Mortgage Group for 14 years. I ended up being a regional manager, had an 18-state territory, and I was purchasing roughly about $30 billion a year in mortgages. And they were just extra zeros to me. But again, I learned a great deal about business, how you treat clients, how you treat people, and how to be more confident. I used to be an extremely painfully shy person, and I had to go out, I had to put myself out there and learn how to talk to people. And it helped me later on when I was becoming a business person on the art side. I don't know that I would have had that confidence if I hadn't done that. So at the end of my career with that company, mortgage banking was definitely not what it was when I started working for them. And I became really disenchanted. It became a very toxic environment. People were getting very greedy, and I wanted to get out of that industry, and I decided it had enough of business, and I wanted to go back to, I wanted to be just an artist or doing something with the arts. So right around that same time, our business, the owners of our business decided to sell our company, and I think they recognized that the industry was taking a turn for the worse and could see possibly what was coming, especially with the jumbo market, and they sold the company, and I had my fingers crossed and was praying that they would offer me a package for having been there so many years, and they did, and I took that money and started my second art gallery. And I had that for 10 years in the village of Tosa. I had a lot of fun with it. It was a great experience. And I had a lot of artists that I represented from around the country. And in that time, I also started getting more involved with MARN, Milwaukee Artist Resource Network. I was on their board, and was really learning a lot more about the art culture, especially, you know, as it related to Milwaukee. And I was loving it because I found that we have a very rich culture here. I feel that there's so much potential here, and I feel like some people are beginning to realize that, and I feel like every year exciting things are happening here in Milwaukee, and I see so much more in the future that it always excites me and gets me out of bed every morning. So I had my gallery for 10 years, and then around 2007 I started painting again, and because I could paint all of these other things, I thought, abstract painting would be really easy, and I wanted to do something different. So I decided to take that challenge on, and I found out it wasn't easy, but loved it and kept going. And I had a gallery, or a studio in my home. I was in the basement at first, and that drove me crazy. I didn't like that. So I moved up into our kitchen. And when Stephen asked me, my husband started asking if I would sign the mini paintings I was splashing on the cabinets, I thought maybe it was time to move out into a different space, so I created a studio space in the bedroom upstairs. And around that same time, I met the Mandela Corporation through an interior designer, and one of their people that coordinated art for Mandel in their offices, and they asked if I would hang paintings in one of their apartment buildings. And I wasn't going to do it, actually. I thought I was being used. I thought it was a bad idea. I thought I was going to hang my work there, and my work was going to be stuck there, and I wouldn't be able to sell it. And then at the last minute, I relented, and something just told me that I should do this. It would be a good idea. So I did. They actually were very professional, and I still have a relationship with them to this day and do work with them. But out of that meeting, I also had the opportunity to meet Reggie Baylor. And I actually had heard about him maybe a little over a year before that. I was at the Pfister when he was the first artist in resident. And I was walking down the hallway talking to Stephen, and my neck just about snapped because I saw this art through a window, and I was so intrigued and so fascinated, had my nose up to the window. I'm like, what is this? Who is this? And who is Reggie Baylor? I must find out. So I started stalking him. Not really, but I tried to find out where he was doing shows and where he was talking, etc., and got to know him a little bit. And I was so in awe of him, I was terrified to talk to him. But I began hearing some of the things that he was talking about, some of his ideas, and I was really intrigued. So when Tracy suggested, I asked if they had any space within their corporate buildings, if they had empty space where I could maybe have a studio space. She suggested I talk to Reggie Baylor.
From Mundell.
Yep, from Mandel. And so I went to meet with him. I talked with him like 3 times. She said, you need to talk to Reggie Baylor because he's doing this thing. He's got this new business called Plaid Tuba. And I'm like, what is a Plaid Tuba? So I was really intrigued, and I went to meet with Ian Heidi, and they told me all what they were doing, and I was so excited. Interviewed with them like 3 times, and so nervous, wanted to be part of Plaid Tuba so badly, and they invited me and asked me if I would be part of Plaid Tuba, and that was a huge turning point for me. Someone giving me that opportunity, meeting other artists that had like minds, they were interested in the same things that I wanted, and a space to create, and it was fabulous. So I was with Plaid Tuba for several years, and then at some point Reggie decided he wasn't doing exactly what he wanted to be doing. He wanted to focus on himself, and he had basically what you're seeing here tonight. He had this vision, and he wanted to fine-tune what he was doing and pursue that. So Plaid Tuba became Material Studios and Gallery, which still exists today in the Marshall Building. If you haven't been, you must come visit. And that was a great experience too, working in that collaborative collective with a variety of artists over the years. Has taught me so much and given me so much that I can't begin to tell you what it's like to be in that kind of environment and have that connection to different artists around the city and actually beyond, because it's connected. Through those connections, I've met other artists in other cities, and my circle keeps getting bigger and bigger, which is awesome. And just recently, I moved into my own studio space because I needed a door that I could shut. I wanted a little bit more quiet space, and just getting into that space now and getting used to it, and so far it's been very exciting. So, 21 years of collective banking, mortgage banking, professional business, I feel gave me an additional basis for understanding how to work with business and art. And many, many conversations with Reggie Baylor over the years with his vision too shaped, I think, how I operate and what I do with my practice, my work. And I'm grateful for all of that. And as I said, I'm still learning. Every time I sit down with Reggie, I learn something new. And I'm still on that journey. So, some of the things I wanted to talk about today was more about how business applies to art.
Yeah, so you have quite a bit of experience with business and art. So how do you combine those two knowledges to really create a culture that will help build that and support that practice?
What I see in Milwaukee, I see some really exciting things happening where some businesses are embracing art and get it, they understand it. Some of those businesses that I've worked with, like Mandel, are still learning how to use art in their businesses, but I'm grateful that businesses like that will give artists an opportunity to make a sustainable living and give the artist exposure is extremely important. There's numerous businesses that are working with our artists in our community. Northwestern Mutual is one that has worked well with artists in the past. I was really excited when Pfizer Forum invited artists in to produce work for the arena. There are several art galleries in town that are acting in a collaborative nature, or they work with and are just amazing at giving artists exposure. One of my favorite ones in the Third Ward is Portrait Society. Their shows are exceptional. When I go in to see what they're doing, I always walk out incredibly inspired, and I love the art that they seek out in our community here. And they take our art outside of Milwaukee too and promote it, which I think is amazing, awesome. But I'd like to see more of that, and I was excited to see what Reggie has done, because I feel like he is employing artists. He's doing everything he ever talked about. So, and is really loving what he's doing as well. So I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there for those types of practices. I think every artist has to determine how they want to work with business and explore, find out more about how they can work with either companies, or if they don't want to do it themselves. You know, Reggie is actually doing that for artists. Hopefully some more things like that will be happening in Milwaukee. I know Milwaukee Artist Resource Network will, with their grant that they received this past year and their new space, their building that they're going into, will be giving artists, by increasing capacity in this new space and their ability, they'll have the ability to promote artists more too.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So there seems to be a lot of support systems popping up, and
Yeah.
or not just popping up, but they've been there, but that are kind of getting out, digging in deeper, and expanding those
Right.
outreaches.
Mhm.
Do you see any missed opportunities? I mean, you've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah.
You've talked about some successes and opportunities achieved, but have you seen anything that you think, oh man, if I had known, or if they had known?
Well, again, in saying that I'd like to see more of it, I think that a lot of artists don't know how to approach artists, or a lot of businesses don't know how to approach artists. Artists don't necessarily know how to approach businesses. So, I like to call it art speak versus business speak. And, you know, bringing artists and business together even more, like I said, I think is important, because I think that it makes a richer culture. I love going into a restaurant, not so much seeing art on their walls. I know that there are restaurants and venues that will do it well and they'll be respectful of artists, but I like to see businesses buying art from artists, not prints on the wall. I love walking into hospitals and seeing original art. I like to see our cultural places filled with art. I would like to see more art in our airport in Milwaukee. I feel like there's a huge missed opportunity there. And when I do go to a city that embraces that and has that kind of exposure for their art community, it's so exciting to walk through the hallways, coming or going in a space like that. Seeing stories on the wall, seeing the art. It's an introduction when visitors are coming into our city. And it's, like I said, I feel like it's a missed opportunity. We do have some art there, some artists that I recognize and love when I go there, but more. We need more of that. Some of the schools are starting to work more, I think, with like this. This is great. I love this top. And so having opportunities like this, I think for artists is fantastic. So our voices can be heard, we can learn more. I'm excited to see Sculpture Milwaukee happening. Slowly but surely, when I first moved to Milwaukee in '86, I felt like Milwaukee was a sleepy city that I just wanted to shake. And it reminded me of St. Paul like decades earlier. And today I feel like Milwaukee's becoming a more vibrant city. I'm seeing more sculpture around the city. I'm seeing more art around the city. And it's happening. What's happening here now is what happened in other cities of our size or larger decades ago. And it's very exciting to be part of what history is happening right now. And we're part of it. So that's pretty cool.
Can I go on to another question?
You may.
Okay. How do you see technology changing the art market? Do we embrace technology? How does it help? Does it hurt art practices? How do we market effectively? Because I think that makes a big impact.
Artists have so many different hats that they wear, and trying to master all of them is challenging, and technology is changing so fast that, first of all, I'm not going to say I'm a technology expert. I am not. But I do try to embrace it myself, but I also recognize that it can be addictive, it can be overwhelming just to keep up with it. So you need to just design or plan how you're going to market, and you need to try new and different things, and you need to look at it really wisely and figure out how you want to put it all together, because if you're using one thing, there might be something else that you can sort of piggyback onto that. And I'm not talking just about Hootsuite, I'm talking about certain platforms that you can use where you can integrate things. One of the ones that I've seen recently, which I actually am migrating my business, where I manage my portfolio, where I have all my information, my paintings are at this show, and the length of the show and all of that. I had been using just ink, and it was a good system and served its purpose. I think it was one of the first good ones out there, but I have now found Art Archive, and way more fun, I think it's easier to use, and it's just colorful, and they have a lot of interactive pieces that you can use, and it actually helps you market too, and it costs a little bit every month, but well worth the plan. They also have an active call to artists on the site. So that's a really good way that you can source either finding grant money. There's a variety of tools in there that you can use and source, open calls for shows, etc. So using things like that, then it's being smart. And if you limit yourself to and use social media smartly, I think it can be a real sales tool. I've actually sold work from Instagram and Facebook, but more on Instagram. So I think you need to design your pages to be exciting and appealing. I think good photography is everything. Every day I see bad Instagram pages and just that could be so much better. So finding classes or going online and teaching yourself how to use those things is really important. Otherwise, don't use them, because you're not going to probably reap the benefit from the time you're going to spend doing them. Another thing I'd like to talk about that we're hearing more about is STEAM, and that's something that Marta's going to be incorporating into our new space too. Hearing a lot more just besides STEM, but STEAM, where business and community and the art community is realizing that by adding art to STEM, that we're creating a better community and better art culture, and I'd like to see more of that happening. And it goes back to, again, bracing artists and using artists the right way in our communities. One thing I'm going to be advocating more for in the coming year is businesses not using artists, using artwork for free, asking artists to perform for free. Artists are, like, even organizations that do fundraisers, and I'm not against fundraisers. I limit myself to a few each year, and sometimes I say yes too much, but they're causes that I believe in and are there causes that support me, so then I think it's worthwhile. But artists have to stop being used as entertainment. Artists need to start being paid for what they do. And artists need to start advocating for themselves for this. It's really, really important. So, of the artists that are in the room tonight, I'm curious, how many of you have ever been taught how to do a business plan for yourself and have done a business plan and regularly practice using it? Just a few?
2, 3. 3?
Well, not all those things.
I find, again, treating yourself as a business person is so important. I have to admit, I'm not always super faithful. I have it in my head, so I am always practicing it of sorts, but it really is helpful to put it in writing, down on paper, look at it every couple months, at least every 6 months, tweak it, change it, so, because your life is changing, your art is changing, and you should be constantly updating it to see if you're getting the most out of your art practice, and if things are benefiting you. If things aren't, then maybe you need to let go of those things, all those things. It helps you focus on where you're going, and in that plan, and there's many things online that you can go on and look for to help you do this. There are courses in it. You can look at books like, there's so many self-help books out there. In fact, when we were listening to Reggie and Melissa the other night, she recommended a new one, which I just downloaded, and I wanted to start reading it before tonight, but I haven't yet. There's a lot of good books out there that you can use that help you do all of these things.
And Reggie was saying you can Google anything. How do
You
I?
can, yeah. And actually, sometimes I get so busy that I forget that myself.
Yeah.
And then I'll be sitting there going, I wonder, duh, you know, so yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing the resources that we have at our fingertips that we don't use. And if you set so much time aside for yourself, once a week at least, just to going in and searching out things that you could use to enrich your practice and make it more beneficial, it keeps you excited in what you're doing. It gives you something new to think about. There are just so many benefits that you can get from that, either in book form or online. Creative Capital is another really, really good one. I can't say enough good about them. That's actually kind of what mine is modeled after. And they offer online workshops that you can sign up for. Some of them will cost a little bit of money, but it's so worth it. And there are other classes like that out there. And there are many, many classes on Google that you'll find where you can sign up and for whatever type of art you're doing, be it music, painting, poetry, whatever. There are things out there that you can find to, give you new ideas and work on your art.
Yeah, and the next question just kind of played into that. I was like, how do you find tools as an artist and a business person?
Yeah.
Things are really at our fingertips today in this world, you know?
They are. There's so much news out there. There's so much information out there. It's overwhelming. Even writing down notes for what I was going to talk about tonight, I went in and Googled and picked up some of my books and reread them and thought about what it was that I wanted to talk about tonight and things that I see that artists just need continual help with. I liken it to when I was in the business world. It's not that often as an artist that I get where I go to a motivational talk or something where we have them, when I come here I feel like I'm getting that. But so I can remember when I was in the baking industry and we were told we had to go to a motivational talk. And I'm like, really? I don't need to go to that. I have so much to do. I know it all. I already knew everything. Of course, I knew everything. And I would always be annoyed that I had to go to a motivational talk. And every time I'd come out going, wow, that was really great. That was awesome. I must do more of this. And 6 months later, I'd be back in my rut. So we always need a pick-me-up because we're always working really, really hard. And instead of spinning our wheels, we need to take a break now and then and have a reality check and stop, take time, slow down a little bit. Yeah, journal, listen more. Sometimes the most obvious things are right in front of us and we're so busy we can't see them.
So you talked about online courses, marketing tools, financing, keeping records. There's a note here about identifying more than one revenue stream, diversifying. So how do you manage that?
That's one thing that I'd like to see more artists do as well, because sometimes there are several reasons that is beneficial. One of them is that sometimes it helps to have something that you're creating and making that will just help pay the bills. So while it might not be your favorite thing to do, it should still be something that you enjoy doing, but it's maybe more saleable than something that you really wanna work on. And that's an important part of your practice too, so you need to find balance in that. But sometimes you need to do something so that you can do what you really want to do, and still make a living. So that's one way of doing it. And there are, again, ways to Google that information or talk to people about getting inspired. What else is it that I could do with my art? How can I make more money off the art that I'm already doing? And have different lines of income, just like a regular business would be, making that plan, so that when you have ebbs and flows in your cash flow, because some of the things that you do might be seasonal, if you have different income sources coming in, it will give you, you know, a better source of income to live. You know, we shouldn't just strive to be rich artists, but rich in the knowledge that we're using our gifts the best, most meaningful ways, and making our lives full and rich with a good living. You know, I think that that's just really important.
Interning?
And get an intern or two, which I'm really bad at. I'm such a control freak. So I like doing things my way. And I get real kind of edgy when I have to hand over control to people. So, but interns, I've had them, and I've had some really amazing ones that have taught me a lot. And they teach me technical skills in the computer, or, oh, here's how you do that in Instagram, and I just end up feeling really, really stupid. But interns can free up a lot of your time for things that they could be learning how, you know, the business side. You don't really want to do those things anymore. They're so, like, kind of boring. And you'd rather be spending more time on something that would be beneficial to you. You can get interns from the schools around town, and it's pretty easy to do. Some are paid internships, some are not. So you should always ask about that. But, you know, another really, really good source to help you make your practice more robust in many different ways.
Yeah. So with all of these things that we're balancing and juggling and paying the bills and filling our happiness bucket at the same time, how do you find the balance in life and the patience for when or if things don't pan out the way that your goals had listed for it to happen? You know, how do you manage that aspect of things?
First of all, I never think I've failed at something, even though there are times where I've gone, oh, that was really stupid. I always feel like it's a learning experience, and I'm glad that actually that I've tried things even maybe if they haven't worked the best, because now I know I don't want to do that. Trying to find balance is probably one of the hardest things I think a lot of artists struggle with, because I know myself, I always feel really frustrated that I don't have more time for marketing, I don't have more time to work on my website, I don't have more time, you know, for a variety of different things that we need to always be working on. And at the end of the day, I don't want to go home feeling frustrated that I didn't get all of those things done. So making lists, just going, you know, trying to attack it a little bit every day, but making that business plan for you, being focused, thinking about your artwork. Can I sign up for an online class where I can maybe pick up a new painting technique? Just, you know, figuring your week out every week, and then life gets in the way and kind of screws that up a lot. But you just regroup and you just keep doing it to feel like you're getting somewhere, and then look back and think, well, 6 months ago, I wasn't doing this, or I'd added a new revenue stream, or I signed up for some workshops. You know, just think about all the good things that you have done for yourself. One of the best things you can do for yourself, I don't care what kind of artist you are, is that we're out, I mentioned a little bit ago, and I need to do more of this myself for me, because I'm guilty of it too, as I get super, super busy and I don't make artist dates with myself. And making artist dates with yourself, not inviting anyone else along, because this is just you and whatever it is that you're gonna be doing, whether you're going to go, and sit in the art museum for an hour or two looking at artwork, or you're going to go strolling through a forest. No matter what it is, you're taking time for yourself to think about you and think about art. So
You call them artist dates?
artist dates.
Okay.
Yep. And you will come back so rejuvenated and be able to look at what it is that you're working on with a whole new energy and everything, and it gives you so much, it's a huge value, and it can be cheap. It doesn't even have to cost you anything, so you're a cheap date.
That's important.
It's important, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, if you had one overarching piece of advice for someone going into the world of art and trying to balance that with business, what would that be? Is that gonna be your art dates, or do you have something bigger?
That's a good question.
Do you want anyone to walk away with at least one thing from this talk? I didn't pitch this question to her in advance.
Always just keep striving for what it is that you can do to make the gifts that you have. Some artists have more than one. I would love to be able to sing. I can't. I could work on that diligently every day, and it's not going to happen. So work on the gifts that you do have, and you know, just they're there for you. But if you don't do anything with it, if you don't market, if you don't put yourself out there, you have control over how you use social media. So I get frustrated when I hear people saying it's terrible. You have control over all of that. You can set the limits, and you have control over a lot of what you can do with your practice. And even when bad things happen, just keeping the eye on what is it that I can do with this gift to make it better for me and better for the world.
Can I open it up? Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask or direct?
I've just been listening to some of the
We can't hear you.
a lot about advocation for collaboration between individual artists and corporations. How do you see like artists convincing or kind of persuading those corporations into seeing that in that way?
So do you find yourself as an artist convinced, and correct me if I'm misphrasing wrong, do you find yourself as an artist convincing these corporations to work with you, and if so, how do you do that? Or do they typically come to you? How does that connection happen?
It's been a combination. I think it's more that they have come to me through connections. Networking is extremely important. Network. Again, sometimes that's hard for me to do. I am shy. It's hard for me to talk to people sometimes. There are times where people have thought that I wasn't even approachable because I could be so shy. So I try to put myself out there and I network. I think connections have a huge part to do with that. Look for a way to connect with them in some way. Does your art relate to what they're doing somehow? Could your art be a good representation for what they're doing? Like, how can you make that connection? And then figure out how you could get to the person that could make that difference. And they might not be the right person, but maybe they could put you in touch with someone. Or find someone that is connected with them, that knows someone there. You know, a lot of it is just common sense. Sitting down and figuring out, the steps that you would, you know, do that. If you ever wanna run questions past me, you can shoot me an email. You can find me on the Marn website, and on my website. It's not that hard to do, but you need to work at it sometimes.
I had an interesting conversation with a commercial art dealer, and so I was wondering how that transition ties into this conversation. But one of the things she also spoke about was that it's like it's difficult to find Milwaukee artists who are willing to, like she says, I like your texture, or I like something in the work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to introduce you to, you know, this big company. They have this kind of feel. Can you use your technique and make this kind of feel? And she's like, a lot of Milwaukee artists are just really resistant to shifting in that way and feel like, oh no, I'm not gonna sell my soul to the corporate devil, you know? I'm gonna keep myself pure. And she was like, I end up bringing artists from other places, but I see a lot of Milwaukee artists and I want to work with them, but what's your thought around that?
I would recommend that they contact organizations like Marn, where they can go in and source their Marn database, put a call out to the art community. I think there's maybe ways that we could have a better platform for that, like be more accessible, and
Yeah, I mean,
that-
can I just jump in? Like, I would say that has to be her personal experience.
yeah.
I mean, there's so many artists here in Milwaukee that do so many different things, and human beings all think differently and act differently. So if she's not finding a single person that's willing, she should reach out to Marn, you know, and try to expand her network of artists, because I find that hard, you know.
And I think it will actually be easier to do once we're in our new building space, which will be later this spring. There's a lot of other arts organizations in town too that are working towards that end and making better connections with businesses. So Imagine Milwaukee is one of them, and we work with them from time to time. So as they grow, hopefully that will improve as well. I think a lot of it has to do, you know, I see increased networking events happening within the art community itself. So maybe if we do more of that, we could, you know, that is a very good question. And I think there's a lot of potential in expanding on that, for sure.
Thanks.
Sure, I've got a bunch of questions, I'm just asking the question I wrote down. What do you think today of gallery representation versus like online or self-promoting of people's art? Because I mean, with online, there's something,
I think both work. I think that you need to decide what is best for you. If you're really good at promoting yourself, you can do it on your own. If you're working really, really hard at it and you're not really getting anywhere, you should maybe ask yourself why and what you could do to change that. Some people do both, and they do both well. So I think it could be, you know, a variety of different things. A lot of artists just don't want to promote themselves. They would rather just spend their time on artwork, and that's great too. That's part of your business plan. You have to sit down and figure out do I wanna promote myself? Cause that takes time too, you know, finding galleries and venues that are going to promote you, that takes a lot of time, and you have to find the right galleries, and, you know, there's just a lot of work that goes into that as well, and managing it all. Which, you know, if you have a system like Archive or something like that, that keeps it a little bit more easy to do. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that brings a follow-up question. You mentioned the business plan, but you didn't go into detail about what it is exactly.
You can Google it.
Yeah, that's true.
Just go in and Google, how do I make a business plan for artists? And, some of the books that, you know, Creative Capital has, a good book out there, The Artist, oh gosh, by Jackie Battenfield. The author is Jackie, Artist Guide. That is one of, I call it my Bible. That is a really good one. It will tell you how to do that, that's a good source. Or go online.
Thank you.
Right.
Just listening to a podcast by Erica Hess. There's the gallerist Bridget Mayer, very well known, top 10 gallery in the nation. One of the things she had said was that as artists, as we're looking for galleries, we tend to look in our own communities. And the world is so big. I mean, the country is so big. And it takes time, but reaching out to 25 galleries across the nation, if you're looking for gallery representation, which I am, by the way, you know, it's not just Milwaukee, Chicago, it's everywhere. And there's so many galleries with so many different interests. But like Pamela was saying, it's that research and that time and the letters and the queries and the tears and the, you know, everything that goes into it. But you know, Milwaukee is phenomenal, but there's a lot more out there.
One of the biggest mistakes I see for people who are approaching galleries is they don't spend enough time making sure that the gallery, first of all, that they are approaching is the right type of gallery for their work. So when they receive decline, it's not because your art isn't good, it's because you're not what they're looking for. So when you're doing it, you know, make sure you're thinking about all those different things.
Yeah,
And it's okay to get declines too, because they might just not be looking for artists right now. A lot of galleries only open up their call for work once or twice a year, or maybe some do it quarterly, but typically they'll just do it once or twice a year. So if you approach them, you should look on there. If it says they're not accepting any new work, they probably really mean that, and you shouldn't feel bad if they say no. Any other questions?
I just wondered how you handle copyright.
How do I handle copyright?
Intellectual property law.
Intellectual
Yeah.
property.
To date, I've never had a problem with that yet. I don't go out searching a lot. If anyone's ever reposted something of mine, it was, you know, not an issue. If I saw a serious infringement on that, I would attack it. You know, dealing with copyright, trademarking, and all of that is best handled with someone who really knows what they're doing, but that can be expensive. So again, if you want to do it on your own, you need to do a lot of research and make sure you're doing it right. I see a lot of artists worrying about it. Oh, I don't want to put my picture out there in my artwork because somebody's going to take it and use it. And yes, it has happened. But typically when you're putting things on social media, first of all, it's not high enough resolution. It's not going to be turned into artwork somewhere. I did, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, have, not with my own artwork, but I did get contacted by somebody asking me how they should, it was an artist who had that happen to them, and, oh, I know what it was. I I got the weirdest email one day. They actually had taken an artist's work, that's what it was. They had taken an artist's work and blown it up, and now they were all upset because it was blurry, because it was a low resolution, and it wasn't worth reproducing, and they were trying to figure out how to frame it, and they wanted to know where they should go for framing, if they could make this picture better, and I gave them an earful and told them that what they were doing was wrong. They weren't going to sell it, they were just keeping it for themselves, but that's just, educating the public is part of, what a community needs to do. And so as we see the art growing in Milwaukee, there isn't really a good guide out there for how artists work with businesses and how businesses work with artists. I'd like to see this amazing guide that would be business art etiquette. Sometimes I think about writing that book and making some money, and then I'm like, yeah, in my spare time, sure. That's not gonna happen, but I've never seen anything like that, and I think it would be amazing for cities to have. Government is another part. How does government is business too, but, another story, right? Yeah. And so, we still have a lot of work to do, don't we?
Any other questions?
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So-